actually on time.
Good evening. Tim just good evening and welcome to Apolitically Incorrect Guyana. My name is KIAN JABOUR and this is my on-time friend, Mr. Timothy Jonas.
Good night, everyone.
He was very impressed that I was on time today. Apparently, I have a thing. I don't know. I didn't know we were usually late.
No, we did well. 6:30 on the dot.
On the dot. I said it's important that we start on time. We could finish whenever. That's not important. All right. So we have an interesting show for you guys today. It's not a very funny show, actually. I was highly disturbed about what occurred this morning. I'm going to ask Robbie to bring up the news source clip for everyone to see what I'm referring to. It has the situation. There you go. The situation was hundreds of people, scores of people showed up this morning at 4 a.m. In front of the Mohammed's Enterprise building on Lombard Street because there was a fake media post that went out by Guyana Daily News, which was sponsored and all, that claimed that, it alluded, because if you read it thoroughly, I'll bring it up. Or actually, Robbie, you could bring it up as well. That alluded to the fact that Mr. Mohammed was going to be giving out money. So this was a paid advertisement. I'll tell you right now, I took these screenshots myself, so nobody could tell me these are edited. This is Guyana Daily News sponsored ad with Mr. Azruddin Mohammed announcement. You can bring up the full one. Yeah, Mr. Azruddin Mohammed, we hear you. We're taking action. Starting Friday, February 7th, 2025, we will be distributing $100,000 to 1,000 people who present a valid ID and proof of address. We understand the challenges you face, and we are here to support you. Distribution will commence at 7 a.m. at our Lombard Street office. And then there's a picture of Mr. Azruddin Mohammed. Now, the truth is, as you can tell, it was not written. I don't know if the person is just very uneducated, because they wanted it to sound like he was the one posting this, as it was and they posted a receipt as well to show that this is a paid advertisement. And then this is just a poorly worded fake, sorry, Instagram, I could show you guys as well. It's a poorly worded fake document there that states that Mr. Azruddin Mohammed will be distributing 100,000 to 50,000. Anyways, what's important here is that this was in response to a video that Mr. Mohammed put out criticizing the distribution of the 100,000. He said, basically asking why it's taking so long. All right. And saying, that it better needs to be done. So this is the response. I'm going to also ask you, and I think this is an important part of the conversation that I showed you earlier. Robbie, there's a next picture, and I'll show Instagram this as well, actually, that shows another sponsored ad. And I'll tell you, I took this picture with the PPP. I took this screenshot myself. Sorry, guys. There we go. This screenshot was taken by me, KIAN JABOUR, so I'm telling you it's legitimate. That states Guyana Daily News sponsored ad and a PPP and beyond, 2025 and beyond. All right, so understand that there is no question as to whether or not the Guyana Daily News is associated with the PPP. Now, I saw some comments circulating on Facebook, and the comments were, well, that doesn't mean the PPP did it. That doesn't mean the PPP were involved, because you had hundreds of the poorest people in this country show up, the most vulnerable, show up at 4 a.m. this morning, leaving their children at home, standing in the rain because of a fake ad that this Guyana Daily News put out. All right? Now, let me tell you what I have taken large observation of, okay? I have waited and I've been watching, and 2 statements were made by the president on other matters for the day already. What he did not do is he did not state that he has nothing to do with Guyana Daily News, that the PPP has nothing to do with Guyana Daily News. They did not cut ties with them. They did not say that was a mean trick to poor people. And he did not state that that should not have been done. And more so, legal action should be taken against them. That's my opinion, right? So let's just draw a clear line that the PPP has not condoned those actions. All right? What's your take on this, Tim?
Well, First of all, we are obviously in that season where people are becoming more and more insane and more insensitive. The question I want to ask is this. To the people of Guyana Daily News, whoever they are, how do you think you are different or better than those people who were left standing from early in the morning in the road? I understand they were elderly folk, poor folk, standing up there on a vain hope that they would be getting their 100,000 cash grant that the government you supported promised would be available since last year in time for Christmas. Now, what does the quiet voice in your head say to you when you sit down in your plush, comfortable accommodations, having driven home in your nice car, probably a duty-free car provided by your government? What does your quiet voice say about those people who are so desperate that they need to believe that they will be able to get this money that was promised to them 2 months ago, and they are willing to go 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning and stand up outside of Mohammed's? How can you justify that in your mind, that you trample on the dignity of people just like that? So having done that, right, in my mind, having went through that, you are totally inconsiderate. You have absolutely no interest in the dignity of poor Guyanese. You hold them in contempt. I ask, well, what's your motivation? What makes you do it? Why do you direct it at Mohammed's? And then KIAN just shows that you are a supporter of the government. And I realize that there is some kind of fear going on, because there is a growing murmur in our society, a growing whistle, a growing wave of people talking about Mohammed's running for government. And that's a curious development, because I haven't heard a word from any PPP platform focusing on the Mohammeds. Yeah, they can cuss down Aubrey Norton. They can cuss down Nigel Hughes in his 25 acres of land up some remote area in Essequibo. But not a whisper about the Mohammeds. Why is that? Is it possible that you are aware, as I am aware, that surveys have been done, instigated probably by the Mohammeds, I don't know, going out into villages and saying to the people in the villages, if you have to choose between Irfan, Aubrey, and Mohammed, who will you choose? Because I've heard that's happening, and I've heard that the numbers of ordinary people in the villages in Guyana are responding to say, we are so fed up with these two parties, and we recognize the generosity of this third group that is giving away money, giving away houses, whatever faults, whatever they are accused of, whatever crimes they may have committed or may not have committed. The numbers of people who are expressing support for that third party, for that third group, there isn't even a party yet. Something tells me you're worried. But if you're worried and your response to that, your attempt to attack these people is to do what you did, well, either you're a complete idiot, because the only result of that is going to be greater support for those Mohammeds who you've directed attention to and who have been able to come up honestly and say, man, we don't know anything about this. How are these people attacking us by this inhumane action that undermines the dignity of the poor people? And then second of all, you're reminding the whole country that this promise of $100,000 that should have been made since before Christmas, that came up after you were given $200 for a household, and that totally incompetent suggestion fell through. Now the entire country is reminded once again of the incompetence of a poorly planned and poorly implemented policy, so that you got hundreds of people still not receiving and scores of people outside Mohammed's early in the morning lining up with no dignity. Once again, you are telling us the kind of leadership we have and the kind of leadership you support with your ugly approach that ignores the fact that whether you're rich or poor, whether you're educated or uneducated, you must be afforded your dignity by your leaders. And you have destroyed that. Shame on you.
Shame. And it's an absolute shame. Tim, what I want to discuss here, and I think this is probably the key aspect of what we are witnessing here. And I will even play it back all the way to the fact of how this 100,000 cash grant has affected society. Now, I think if there's the first takeaway from this is that all this scream about progress and the country moving forward and the people developing and the fastest growing GDP in the world, etc. I think the government has done a job of posting on their newsrooms and their DPI and their Chronicle and the president's private page and the Guyana Daily News, etc. and painting this picture of progress and success and forward movement of the country. And when you watch what's going on the ground for this $100,000 and the desperation that has kicked in and the anger that it's brought out in people of where their money is that you promised them and the need that has been developed in this society, the dependency on this 100,000, I personally have taken away that if you cannot understand that there is only a select group of people getting rich and making big progress in this country, and the rest of this country being almost solely, or behaving like they're solely dependent on this 100,000, and not understanding that there's that disconnect on what's going on with the people of Guyana versus the select friends and family group, and the picture that's painted in the media, then something is wrong with you. And I have to make a statement on the PPP idiots, as you just said, because they've taken away people's dignity, that are trying to defend this by saying, well, those poor people should have read the flyer properly, or they should have done their due diligence and done research as to whether or not it's real. It's despicable. It's disgusting. And I've watched so many of the PPP mouthpieces online state these things, and it is nasty to think that you will justify a poor, desperate person. And I saw somebody post something that struck, okay? You know what it said? It said, you know, all of your arguments out there that logic should have been used and people should have not gone out there, they should have used their logic. But you know what trumped that logic? Desperation. That's what the person, and you know, that struck a chord. Those people just went out there. I'm telling you that of those hundreds of people, there are people out there that went, man, this seems a little fishy, but I really need this 100,000.
Just in case.
Just in case.
It's desperation. They needed to believe it.
Yes.
But it's funny you say that, because what happens is when things reach a stage of desperation, when things reach a stage that things are so bad you need to believe, as you say, you will persuade yourself that anything, no matter how implausible it is, you'll believe it.
Yeah.
So I saw today on social media, someone was talking about this, and a response by one of the pro-PNC folk was to say the PNC would never do anything like this. And the person's response was to say, this was callous, this was unkind, this was insensitive. But what could be worse than trying to take away our democratic right? Now, I saw 5 years ago that half of the country so desperately wanted to believe in their party that they were willing to throw out any evidence that was in front of them. They were willing to ignore anything that anyone said and to throw the blame on the other party, which had done nothing in this case, just because they were desperate to believe. We have a situation of such abuse in our political landscape that both sides, although they are abused by their own party, the party of their own ethnicity, they don't care. The other party is worse, and they are desperate to believe anything.
Yeah.
So when you say to the people, to the supporters of a party, that their party is corrupt, they say, prove it. When you show that there are areas of property being given away by central housing to party, family, and friends. They say that's not proof, and they say in any event the other side did worse.
Yeah.
When you say, look at the incompetence going on in terms of these policies and their implementation, they say, don't worry about that, it's good for the country. When you say contracts are being awarded to family or friends, they say, but don't you want roads? It's to build roads. Roads are good for the country. Because they need to believe.
Yeah.
Because if you take away that belief and they're left with the stark reality of the incompetence and the corruption that their own party is so blatantly demonstrating, and this is both parties.
Both sides, both, absolutely.
They have to believe.
Yeah.
Now, that is exactly what happened outside Mohammed's this morning.
Yeah.
Those people had to believe because we are an oil-rich country. But let me tell you, the poverty that we see every day when we go out, when you go into the market, when you look in the society, when you go in the country areas, that poverty hasn't changed in the last 30 years. Those people are still desperately poor. They're still using a cast net to catch food every day. They're still trying to scramble something to grow some plantain and some edo, going in the backyard to get something.
Correct.
And that has not changed. And those are the people who at least got a little patch of land to try something.
Yeah.
People are destitute, people are suffering, and those people desperately lined up.
Yeah.
And we still want to justify when our government in the budget says $30,000 for old people.
Yeah.
$20,000 for the disabled. And we want to say that's a good thing because it's our party and it has to be a good thing. We have to desperately believe it.
Yeah.
It's time we face our own self. We look in the mirror and we face the truth of where we are going and what we are becoming.
Yeah. You couldn't have said it better. And the people have to understand that they have the power and it comes out in their vote. All right. You have the power to look at your party and state, this is not right what's happening. You have not done enough for the people of the country. And I am making sure that I am doing my part to implement a system that will have checks and balances, that will create accountability and make sure you do your job for all Guyanese. Because that is what is lacking. You have to realize that you are the person. You said something, Tim, that on the last show that you were on, not last week, it would be the week after, before, that it just struck me and it really kind of just resonated with me over the last 2 weeks. And it was pointing out the fact that we are sitting right now watching the PPP government claim progress and prosperity, and we're moving in the right direction, and look at all the great that's happening. And you made the comment that was not because of any sort of good decision or management of any of the political parties that have ever run this country. Right now, what is currently going on in Guyana, the bridges being built, the roads that you're claiming is a move in the right direction, whatever you claim is progress, because other than roads, I'm not sure. The truth is, I want you to think to yourself, well, how are those things even possible? And I sat down and I said, you know what I always remember is that Guyana, before oil, was not a poor country. Okay? Oil, bauxite, sugar, gold, bauxite, sugar, diamonds, rice, timber, and the list goes on, right? And
we were rich in resources, but we were mismanaged.
So now I sat down and I went, you know, if we had all of that pre-oil and we were still dirt poor, you know, them coming now and making the claim that they are doing something positive from Guyana, it's just out of pure dumb luck. They have fallen on to, as you like to say, free money, and they have never made proper management decisions for this country ever, which is why this country was so destitute, only second to Haiti in the region, up until we've now found oil. And they sit down there, the oil deal that they didn't even sign. And they sit down there, and the fact of the matter is, you made the comment just now of the people that are suffering at the hands of their own party. And all you can do is sit down and realize to yourself that the only way that they can control the people, the only way that they can stay in power, is to ensure the people stay poor and destitute and begging for the next side, for the next option to do better.
I'm glad you raised that, because I think we now have an example of how dangerous it is to allow the people to have wealth. You see, what is it you want in life? We're poor. We're descended from slaves and indentured servants. So the first thing we want is money. It is what the families that are successful stick together, and they try to create wealth and increase the wealth generation to generation. Where the families are broken, it's more difficult. But the first thing you're looking for is money. We failed in that, and poverty has been the absolute ubiquitous characteristic of Guyana, of Guyanese society. Everybody poor. The few who count themselves rich are in fact small if you look at it in the context of the first world.
Yeah.
Even the companies that we think are large companies, a couple $1 million a year US income, compare that to the Sears and the Macy's and it's nothing.
Yeah.
So we have poverty, but then if we overcome that and we start giving wealth to family and friends so that the family and friends start getting wealthy, they now have money. What's left for them to want? Now they want power.
Right.
They want political power. And that's what we're seeing. We are seeing, as the middle class grows and becomes more wealthy, they are challenging the status quo. They're not happy to say to people that they know are less competent than them, that's all right, y'all go ahead, we just want some money. They're saying, I can do what you're doing and I can do it better.
Good conversation.
And we are seeing new challenges, new folk coming up. We're seeing the AFC start. Now we're seeing Mohammed's. I don't know if they've done it, if they're the ones who did it, but we are seeing surveys in the villages. What do you think of Mohammed's, this new group? And in Guyanese society, you are seeing more and more people saying, we had enough of those two parties. We are seeing competent people elsewhere.
Yes.
The two parties need to be worried.
Yes.
But I answer your question by saying, if you give the middle class enough so that they're driving to work and they're going on a holiday and they got enough money in their pocket that they don't have to worry about food tomorrow, the next thing they're going to say is, I want some political power as well.
Right.
And I think that is what we may be seeing. Now, that's an interesting development.
Yeah.
Because as our middle class gets more independent minded, as the academics, the professionals, the people who are skilled workers, who are looking after their families, who are holding their own in the social contract, as they are beginning to independently look at their governments, look at their parties, and say, y'all have been doing stupidness for 50 years. Time for a change. I suspect the two large parties are worried. I suspect that's why we are seeing this gratuitous attack on the Mohammeds. But interestingly enough, the attack itself shows how callous the people behind the attack are. They show their true colors and they expose themselves. Definitely. And it has backfired so gloriously that it makes you wonder if they themselves are now saying, wait, maybe we're incompetent after all. Because I don't know, could have gone worse.
Well, as I pointed out, the fact that the government or the PPP have not come out with a statement removing themselves from what took place there.
From the Daily News?
From the Daily News.
But you showed the picture yourself.
Correct.
2025 and beyond, the PPP.
Robbie, for all of them who just tuned in, could you just bring back up that picture, please? It's sponsored ad by Guyana Daily News.
So they just like to see
and understand why we're making this comment of connecting the two. No, not that one. The last one. This is what the topic. There we go. So just so you all are aware, this is the conversation that we're having, is Guyana Daily News's connection to the PPP. All right.
So what I would like to see, if it happens tomorrow, if there's a comment from the government in the Chronicle, in a government
because let's
agency.
say, I just want to, you have to just make sure you understand this. So what all the PPP sympathizers and the loyalists are going to say is, well, this is a sponsored ad. The PPP just paid to be there. Now, again, as the current governing party, if you have not, again, made a statement to separate yourself and say, listen, this has nothing to do with us. As a matter of fact, just to clarify, you can come back, Robbie, just to clarify something else, is understanding that Guyana Daily News is not even a legitimate news source. It's just an online thing. They don't even have accreditation. And that's one of the big things that has come up on social media now. Obviously, you got everybody doing their digging and so on as to, well, because this is not the first time this news agency, there was some unrest that has caused problems. I don't know if you remember, there was unrest up the East Coast. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. But they were the first ones to make a statement, the editor, and he had actually gotten fired or something like that.
One of the problems with social media is that everybody now has a platform. So,
right.
I mean, anyone who wants to say something, post it live, and they have a platform, and there's no restraint. And it is what enables people to choose the media forum they want to listen to,
right,
so that they can believe what they want to believe. So if you want to believe a pro-PNC voice, you will tune into a pro-PNC voice. Pro-PPP voice, you'll tune in to the DP News. That's how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to lean in now into this Azraddeen Mohammed dynamic, okay? And I share your sentiments. Now, what I have started to notice now, especially, highlighted by this recent attack and this recent situation, is whether or not, first of all, Azraddeen Mohammed has not launched a political party. He's never stated that he is going for a government. He's never stated that he's getting involved politically. There's been no statement from him whatsoever on that matter. Okay? Now, we have watched social media kind of dub him a potential threat to the government. You've seen him go into, the ghettos of Guyana. You've seen the people praise him. You've seen him go after actively people that the government have neglected, and him do, work, giving them houses, buying them wheelchairs, whatever it is. And making statements like he did about the poor management of GPL or the poor management of the cash grant handout. And you've seen him kind of posture that he can do better than the government. And he's amassed a support behind him. Now, what I want to discuss is that support. I think that's the key here. If anybody has picked up, and if any of these, PPP, I'm actually going to tell you a secret just now. I'll tell all of you a secret just now. If anybody has picked up on the trends and what's going on here, it has shown now that whether Azraddeen Mohammed or not, the people of Guyana are looking for another option. And he is now just that focal point that has opened up this can of worms that people have now, pulled the wool over their eyes, because a lot of it was, oh my gosh, who else though? Or, oh my gosh, the PPP is definitely going to win again, no matter what. And what people have now started to realize is, wait a second, this organization is not as strong as they think. They're in their little bubbles. They're pushing their little media, and they're thinking to themselves, oh, don't worry, we got this one in the bag, because their leaders have built this confidence in them that we are good. But I always like to go back to the numbers. If you look at 2011, it was a minority government. You look at 2015, APNU won by one single seat. All right, Charandas's seat. You fast forward to 2020, where we are now, when everybody hated APNU. They bundled the economy. They did a horrible job. PPP are right now, as we speak, in power by one seat. One seat equals, what, in and around 6,000 votes, right? 450,000 people vote at our elections. Now, if you take the fact that the margins are so narrow already that it only takes 5,000, 6,000 people to sway and determine who the government of this country is, just on social media, which is not even the whole country, you can tell by the trends on social media that Azraddeen Mohammed got way more support behind him than 5,000 people. Lots more. Now, just to drive the point home, you now have to also take into consideration what happened in 2011. Which is when everybody decided the PPP is too corrupt and the PPP too vindictive and the PPP are not doing a good job in managing the country, and their own supporters stayed home. Now, that is such a key aspect to this, because...
Well, I'm not sure they stayed home. Let me interrupt you.
Go ahead, please.
2011,
go ahead.
Had a plausible third party.
Yes, AFC.
So I wouldn't say people stayed home, but enough people were independent-minded to go for that third party that it broke the status quo. It upset the status quo.
After 20-something years.
I think that can very easily happen.
The number showed that it was a lower turnout, though, just so you know. And it also was in 2020.
But how much lower?
I don't have the exact numbers on me, but I can bring it down for the next show.
You see, the two sides cancel each other
out
there.
Yes. That 200,020 will always vote for the PPP and the PNC.
So when you talk about staying home... and then they didn't stay home in 2020, but still only won by one seat. The maths don't work.
Very right.
We have a thing in Ghana that we vote along ethnic loyalty, and no matter how badly our party does, we go in and vote for that party elections time so that the other party can't win. So that low voter turnout, I don't think that works in Ghana. the people who are voting along ethnic allegiance will come out to vote.
Will come out of it. But again, you remember at the end of the day, it's not 220 equal 440,000. The elections are in and around 450,000. That's more than a seat, right? Call it 2 seats are whether they stay home. Those are the independent thinkers. Those are in the middle. I ain't got nobody to vote for. I ain't want to vote for nobody.
I know one of the interesting dynamics I saw in this particular case when the large party supporters were trying to direct criticisms at the Mohammed movement.
Yeah.
And as you said, none of them has ever said they're going to run for office, but this hype is being generated by these surveys and the curiosity of social media. And I also think the desperation of the people who are independent-minded and really have had enough. So I think that in itself is creating its own wave. But what I found interesting is that when an attempt was made to poke and find a weak spot by saying, these people have been accused of crimes, the surveys report that the ordinary Guyanese said, so what? The ordinary Guyanese said, these folk may have been accused of crimes, but they have been doing work with the people, showing generosity. They have been giving away things. I don't see that coming from any of the 2 big parties.
Right.
All they're giving away is taxpayers' money, but they're doing it so poorly, and they're giving themselves much more than they're giving anybody else.
Correct.
And then they're saying, and furthermore, the 2 large parties are demonstrating so much corruption at a criminal level that nobody got the moral high road anyway.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because it's easy to stick a finger at somebody and say, this person's terrible because. But for some reason, the penny has dropped in our lovely country that there is no moral high ground among our political parties.
Agreed.
That if you are giving away land corruptly, and if there's a connection between the companies you are giving land to along Ogle, along the highway, if there's a connection between the companies you're giving that land to and the people who you are standing up with, taking pictures with, saying, these are my friends from years ago, and people are bringing that and making that connection right now, you have no defense.
Right.
And, I saw that silly statement by Central Housing the other day. Central Housing is accused of giving away land on the instructions of the government to family and friends by a process that is ignored. And Central Housing comes out to say, we follow due process, and they finish with us.
As did the president. Right.
So I say, well, what's due process? I'm sitting on Central Housing. I imagine myself on their board. And we say, man, we see that there's a lot of homelessness in Enmore. Let's make a housing development in Enmore.
Yeah.
So we allocate a piece of land, 50 acres, 100 acres. And we have to award a contract to build the roads, build the drains. We then have to, so when we've surveyed it and we got house lots, we have to invite people to come. We got to fix a price. We got to invite them. We got to decide how we're doing it, what part is commercial. So there has got to be a number of meetings and a number of decisions made, and the board has to meet and the board has to approve it. I challenge Central Housing to produce to us the records of board meetings, board decisions, contracts invited for bids to build drains and roads for any of those places in Ogle, for any of those areas that they say were given out by due process. I want to know the due process is.
Correct.
I will remind people that one of the things Central Housing has always said since the 90s when it was done reasonably honest under Chedi Jagan, that you're not eligible for land for residents from Central Housing if you already own a movable property.
Right.
I would like to know if that continues, because I'm aware.
It definitely does not.
I'm aware.
I promise.
Of many, many people.
Yeah.
Including government people who benefit from Central Housing land when they already own property.
That's right.
So was due process followed?
No.
I would like to know, is it true that you cannot sell your land when you get it from Central Housing? Because I'm aware of government ministers who have received land and promptly sold the land at profit.
Just like they're duty free, which you can't get either. But yeah.
Let's talk about the due process and let Central Housing come out to say to the people, this is how the land in Ogle was allocated. We invited bids. We gave it to the people who qualified to the bet. Let us see what the system is that they're saying they followed procedure. I don't think we're ever going to see that.
Yeah.
So when you start now, as a party loyalist, trying to poke holes in somebody by saying they've been accused of crimes, you begin to sound very hollow, and it does not resonate with the Guyanese population anymore.
Good. I
want
agree.
something different.
No, but do me a favor. I want you to land this home. How do we fix the problem? Tell me how in Parliament we can solve this. This is what, here, we have fantastic viewership today.
I say this so
I know, because the PPP people are going crazy here. You're doing a good job.
I'm beginning to think it's sounding like a part, because I say it over and over. Central Housing is run by a board. The board is created under what's called the Housing Act. Mm-hmm. The board is appointed by the minister. So you got 7 people sitting and watching each other, all of them party friends, loyal, looking at each other, accepting blindly all directions from the government.
Mm-hmm. Or you will be removed.
If the Mohammeds or AFC or ANUG or anybody gets a swing vote in Parliament, so that the opposition control Parliament, you pass a very simple, I could do it in 10 minutes. You draft a very simple amendment to that act, saying that board shall comprise 2 people appointed by PPP, 2 people appointed by PNC, 1 person appointed by the largest third party. Mm-hmm. And that board would never allow properties to be given away to government, family, and friends along the Heroes Highway or in Ogle. Because that board would be autonomous and independent.
Yeah.
And more than that, the people working for Central and Housing and Planning would be hired by that board, and therefore would be hired because they're competent. They won't be hired because they're family and friends.
Simple. Simple.
No more corruption.
Simple. This is not rocket science. This is why we need a minority government. This is a simple, like another good example right now. And I have to bring this up, Tim, because I think it's something affecting this entire country to no end, is the corruption going on in the police force. And I know you can challenge me, and we're about to have the conversation. The corruption in the police force that is leading to these death trucks on the road, killing people on a daily basis. Now, just before we jump into the corruption, what is led there, Tim, at the end of the day, I will say this openly. If we have been running now for 4 years with a chief of police, and we know that crime is on the rise, the statistics show it. We know that the corruption is in the police force. We know that the roads are more dangerous now than they've ever been before, okay? And there's a sprinkling of putting up 2 signs that flash in some number, all right, that everybody thinks means progress and less people will die. That's ignorant thinking, right? Because at the end of the day, the only way to stop it is to enforce the laws, all right, which already exist. Now, they have just recently decided that they are confirming the chief of police that has been there for the last 4 years doing a deplorable job. He is now been confirmed and solely on the decision of the PPP. They have decided by themselves, which I think there's a court, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's in the matter is in court.
I actually don't know if it's gone to court, but I know there's a lot of talk about the legality of appointing and confirming someone who's past retirement age, but I don't know if it's...
There you go. And not consulting with the opposition, right? Because Chief Justice, Chancellor, Chief of Police, all of these need to be stated in our Constitution that there needs to be consultation of GCOM chair, etc. Now, if we are watching this type of incompetence, this type of corruption be encouraged, and people are dying on the road, then I'm not sure what more you want, how else you want us to explain this, than if there is a minority parliament, all right, if there's a third party swing vote in parliament, decisions like that cannot be made, all right? Because if you have decided that you're going to unilaterally confirm a police chief that clearly the statistics show is not doing a good job, then obviously there will be repercussions when it comes to the decision-making process in Parliament. This is why we need a minority government, to hold them accountable, to hold them transparent, all right? So that they cannot make unilateral decisions like this.
Well,
right?
I agree with your approach that we have to find a way to decentralize power away so that unilateral decisions can be made. I don't like your example. Mm-hmm. You see, we get carried away with the fanciness of things and the abstract ideas and the obscure thoughts and the lofty ideals. But I like to kind of bring it down to earth and look at it on a day-to-day, practical, ordinary level. So I'll put myself in his shoes. I say, okay, by some magic, I'm the Commissioner of Police. And what do I do about truck drivers running up and down the highway and harming life and limb, creating a danger, creating a menace? As Commissioner of Police, what do I do on a day-to-day basis? I can't go on the road with a flag and put up my hand and stop them and start fining them. The fact is that it's hard for me to criticize the commissioner on that basis. What I would have to do is I would have to go to the government, I'd have to go to Parliament, and I'd have to say, look at the design of these roads. We are, by virtue of the poor rules we are applying, encouraging people to break the rules so that we have an atmosphere of lawlessness. And at that level, I would have to try to instigate some changes. But that is something I think all of us can do, and that redounds back to Parliament and to the ministry that is responsible for it. The police are there to enforce the laws. If the laws themselves are unfair, and I've said this before in this forum, that if you're telling me on a 4-lane highway, I got to drive at 50 kilometers an hour, I'm sorry, I'll be speeding. Mm-hmm. So every day I drive up Homestretch Avenue. Homestretch Avenue is a big, wide, beautiful road, and I don't drive at 50 kilometers an hour, Kian. It's a stupid rule. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Thomas Augustine, an old legal man from the Middle Ages, said there is a duty to disobey an unfair law. Martin Luther King followed that principle. Mahatma Gandhi followed that principle. Right. So if we have stupid laws, you can't criticize people for not obeying the laws. You have to make the law sensible.
Yeah, but I can challenge you on this again, though, because at the end of the day, there are laws that exist that should stop these trucks from doing what they're doing. Yes. For example, fitness for these trucks. Yes. They're overloading of these trucks. All of right? Poor training. These licenses being given to these people.
The first thing to do is recognize that if 90% of our road users are breaking the law, then the police lose the fight. So when you make the laws fair, you will have people like me who want to drive safely and do drive safely. You will have people like me in the majority obeying the laws, stopping at the pedestrian crossings, not trying to jump the red light, stopping at the stop signs. Every time I stop at a pedestrian crossing, which I do religiously, is a point I make. I got to look in the rearview mirror because somebody will be shocked and will want to run into the back of my car. Every time. And I ask you guys, anybody watching here, if you drive, do you stop at pedestrian crossings to recognize and respect the right of way that pedestrians have across that crossing? And I know you don't, because I drive in this country. So you are part of the 90% breaking the rules. The reason 90% break the rules is because most of the rules are so unfair that it creates a tradition, it creates a culture of rule breaking. If we had fair rules, we would all adhere to them, and then the police wouldn't lose from the outset. They would know that their fight now is against that 10%. The truck drivers who are driving slowly in the right lane, overloaded, not being able to stop in time. So their braking distance is so dangerous that they can't stop, they can't maneuver because they're overloaded. If we have fair systems that most people in our society are happy to obey with dignity, and it's always about dignity, then the police can concentrate on the minority. So for me, the buck stops with the ministry and with Parliament for making fair laws. Just
a touch on dignity, and I know this is going to strike a chord with everyone, especially in our conversations that we have. Is this same duty-free concession situation that the government refuses to allow the average citizen to own a decent vehicle, own a Prado or own a four-door pickup? And it boils back down to, when we talk about dignity, is them showing up in their Prados with their flashing red and blue lights without no emergency and telling you must move off the road. So I'm lending to your argument of the systems that are taking away people's dignity.
Well, again, I'll ask drivers, and I'll ask you to think about it. If you drive on the road, I have seen a notable change when a siren is coming.
Oh, yes.
I don't see people moving off the road.
No, I have to.
So again, 90% faced with unfairness are disobeying. Faced with an unfair situation where they feel oppressed. So right now, if I look and it's not a police vehicle or an ambulance, and I look for that, I don't move. I saw an army vehicle the other day with sirens on. Show me where
we are not at war.
Vehicle is supposed to tell me that I must give up my constitutional right to drive freely without hindrance in Guyana to get out of the way for him. But we have that kind of abuse going on. We have plain vehicles. Whether they're police or not, I don't know. But telling you must get off the road. And I see more and more drivers are saying no. Now that creates a dangerous situation. We should be moving to the side of the road. because they are driving dangerously so that they can put out a fire. A fire truck is going to put out a fire. A police vehicle is going to the scene of a crime or to prevent a dangerous situation. But you know what? We don't believe that anymore. And we're right. Because we have seen those same vehicles, sirens on, turn off the sirens and turn into school. Turn off the sirens and turn into...
But this lends back to my argument about the police commissioner.
Now that I think he can fix. And we've
we've
said it in this forum, that in other countries there's a black box that you put in the vehicle. And anytime the siren goes on, that black box records it. So you have to account back at base why the siren went on, what fire you were going to put out, what emergency you were dealing with to justify you driving dangerously and you impeding the free traffic of other people who got to get out of your way.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have that here. So that once again, we have a situation where, and we see this in Guyana from the lowest to the highest, you abuse the authority that you have been given. So we see authority being abused by using your siren. It's something that can change, and maybe if he's listening, that is one of the things he can implement now. But I don't judge him at this stage for the carnage on the road, because it is a much larger, holistic, and nuanced problem.
Agreed. But I will say this again, and I state it every chance that I get when it comes to these death trucks. All right. We, the people, should be on the road protesting, advocating that there must a simple solution to part of the problem is to put a limiter on these trucks. These trucks do not need to be driving overloaded, not fully up to scratch with their fitness, at 120 kilometers an hour down the East Bank Road, a one-lane road. If anything runs out in front of them, if there's somebody suddenly stops, they can't stop. And that is majority of the issues on the road now. These trucks are moving so fast that they can't stop when something's going on in front of them. So, and if you put a limit on these trucks, which is done around the world simply, then it stops them from driving this fast. And that will eliminate at least half of the road issues we have with them.
Kian, I'll tell you something. It goes back to money. Everything goes back to money. The arrangement with truck drivers that I have heard of is that for every trip they make to get a load, they get out of $500. Now, if you own a truck and you are saying to the truck driver you're getting $3,500 per trip, you are inviting that truck driver to lose sleep and drive long hours, but more importantly, to make that trip as quickly as possible so you can go back and do it again. Because if he only makes 2 trips, it's only $7,000. He wants to make at least 10,000 that day. So you're telling him he got to make 3 trips. And hopefully, if he's fast enough, he might make it 4. Now, if that is the system that exists,
well, you're in trouble already.
That can't be fixed. And that can't be fixed at the level of the relationship with the driver. That has to be fixed at a level of the laws that impose an obligation as to how many trips can be made. So if that is where the problem is, if you're focusing that that's the problem, then that lends to a solution.
Yeah.
Because truck drivers, what I would say, first of all, truck drivers must have a flat rate salary.
Yeah.
Second of all, the insurance for a truck must be specific to drivers. It mustn't be open insurance. And third, if you have an accident, it should be very easy to lose your insurance or to lose your license for a period of time.
Yeah.
So there are remedies that can be taken, but first you have to see where the problem is so that you can focus on how to solve it.
Agreed. And I will always lean back to this conversation of understanding that the problem that we currently have in the country is that we have a winner-take-all political dynamic in which 2 parties, either one or the other, wins and takes complete control of the country. And because of that, no one has any say or can make any changes or can influence them in any way while they are in government for that time. Now, their argument is if people can hold them accountable, then they will not be able to continue the progress, because people will just slow them down in what needs to be done and the decisions that need to be made. What people need to start realizing is that if you set up a system, like Tim has said, like he said, like a stuck parrot, if you set up a system where every decision has to be consulted by multiple parties in parliament representing different groups, then everyone will be represented in the decision-making process. So if you have a conversation that is, for example, the biggest part of the budget going towards infrastructure, that clearly we are highly over capacity. We are having contracts that cannot be finished. We're having contracts that they're doing poor work and just finishing the job because they don't have even enough engineers in the ministry to monitor the projects, the corruption that's involved. Then obviously a conversation can be had to say, maybe you're allocating too much money to infrastructure, especially when we have other social ills like our education failing rate, like our pensioners being given pittance, all right? Like GPL, that we continue to get blackout. So we have areas that money needs to be spent in that have to be focused on now, but nobody can speak to them about that because they have a majority. This is why we need a minority government. This is why your vote needs to be anything except the two big parties, the PPP and the PNC.
I think this is why also we've seen AFC attacked in his personal attack, and now we're seeing Mohammed attacked, just in case. Not because he's declared, but just in case.
Correct.
Decides to go political.
Correct.
Because it would be unthinkable for there to be a minority government. The government right now cannot conceive how they will move forward as a minority government. But I firmly believe that it is the only way to save our people, to save Guyana. We talk about one Guyana. We see tokenism all over the place. But the fact is that you have one party that is looking after one set of people. And if they lose, you'll have the other party looking after the other set of people. And the only way for us to get it right is to have a system where if there's one party in government, the other party is controlling parliament. So they have to talk to each other, and all the people are looked after. That is the only way to get it done. This tokenism with one Guyana, it doesn't work. It has never worked. It's always been a pretense, and Guyanese are seeing past that. So
absolutely,
let us celebrate any third party that comes along. Let us hope that they are successful. Let them give us all our best, give them our best wishes, and hope that in 10 months' time, we have the result that there is a minority government, whether it's APNU or whether it's PPP, makes no difference. Two sides of the same coin, but if one is in power, I would like to see the other one controlling parliament along with third parties.
I like it. We're going to end now, but I'd just like to state something that I just want everybody to understand. I said I was going to reveal a little secret, not my secret, but just to understand what's going on with the political dynamic now in the country moving into election season. So I was very reliably informed, anyone can challenge it and they can find out for themselves, that the government is holding very large meetings in, for example, in the conference center, bringing in all of their PPP. So I say this because I want people to look at the comments here. They're bringing in all these trolls to do social media campaigning. And it's important for people to know how far these parties are going with this type of dynamic. So, because what has happened is it gives the impression of lots of people, and when many people say the same thing, it must be factual. So what they're doing is they're bringing all of their people under the umbrella. They're bringing them in and doing social media training with all the PPP supporters that they bring in from the different regions. And they're telling them, anybody that speaks negative about the government, attack. And if bringing them into groups and stating, when we put out messages here, you must just parrot this information. And showing them how to make videos and how to, maneuver social media, comment, come up, make fake profiles, etc. And it's so important that the average Guyanese public understand how far these parties, and this, I know APNU's doing it as well, how far these parties are going in order to control social media, give the impression, of the masses speaking. Or progress, progress, and look how many people are speaking about it. And it's something that the country has to understand as a political dynamic is occurring. If you don't know that these things are happening in the background, then you can't maneuver as spoken about between the comments that...
the signs are very clear.
The signs.
And I didn't know that was happening with that kind of force. That's very interesting. I will make the observation that I think Guyana Daily News didn't go to that class, because
I feel like they ran the class. I feel like
their thing backfired.
Yeah,
So I think they got to go and take that particular exam again. I don't know who they are. I don't know who the people behind it are, but they missed that class clearly. But it is a dangerous development because the truth is that everybody has a potential platform on social media, and therefore, if enough voices say it, it does begin to sound like the truth. But there's a flip side to that. The people who are commenting on social media are all in an echo chamber.
Yes.
They're not changing minds on social media. Nobody goes on social media to be convinced.
Yeah.
They go on social media to vindicate the point of view they already have. And if they don't like what you're saying, then they're going to go and listen to somebody else.
Yeah.
So the trolls who are cussing you and me out right now, they may think that they're running interference and detracting from the truth of what we're saying. But the other people who are quietly listening, I'll invite those trolls to have a look. There's quite a few people who are quietly listening.
There's about 10 talking and there's about 150 listening. But go on.
And by Monday, it will be 1,000.
And then, every show has about 25,000 views. Absolutely.
The trolls got to try a bit harder because they're not running interference very well. But I think that they need to realize that nobody comes onto social media to be persuaded. They come on to vindicate their ideas, to vindicate their thoughts, to crystallize their thoughts and to move on. So I don't think the social media campaign is a campaign to sway votes. It might be a campaign to cuss down.
Yeah.
But be
it's
careful.
Just as nasty politics. They claim that APNU is racist and APNU is this terrible party. And the truth is they're both identical. That's all I'm trying to point out. The PPP and the PNC, how come no politicians are going to jail in this country?
One Guyana.
Oh, by the way, I just like to state, I want to close off. And on that note, I just like to state that I am trustworthy again.
What does that mean?
It means that the PPP have decided that I'm trustworthy again.
Well, not after this show, Kian.
No. They have called me and they've asked me. They said, Kian, you were there and present during the 2020 elections when APNU tried to rig. And we need you to come to court and tell the truth.
Well, Kian, after this show, they're not going to call you back.
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell the truth. I will. On my God. But I just want to make it known that I am now trustworthy again. The PVP and I are friends. They're asking me to help them in court to prosecute the people who attempted to rig, and I'm happily doing it, and I will do it as long as they need me. Okay? So when they tell you everything I say is lies and all the commentators, all the things I talk about nonsense, well, apparently in a court of law, my word is gospel.
Well, if you tell the truth all the time, they'll be happy half of the time.
What a statement. And on that note, guys, please be very careful. It's wet out there, all this rain from nowhere. It's very, very dangerous out there, guys. I'm going to tell all of you again, just be defensive on the road. As Tim, his example, please slow down at the pedestrian crossings. Please watch out for one another. If we all try to drive safely to protect the other person, we will all be protected. That's the idea.
Respect the road, be courteous, and allow other people an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's not a race.
Okay. On that note, guys, thank you for joining us. We'll be back here next Friday. Please have a wonderful weekend. We will see you guys next week. Take care.